been obviously demonstrated that with 100% securitization, obviously the incentive to verify the individual quality of the borrower goes, and so evidently it results in a deterioration of the quality of the credit because only the statistical categories matter. And you can go on and go on and go on. I mean, the 101 of contract theory would tell you just you don't do things this way. So that's still say on some questions on the macro side. Now, questions on the macro side, I think there is a whole controversy beyond the macro versus micro controversy inside the macro that has not been settled at all, which is, what is the responsibility of the low monetary interest rate environment? What is the responsibility of the Fed, to put it clearly? And what is the responsibility of the global conditions with the flow of saving going into the US, lowering long-term interest rates, and thereby contributing whatever the monetary policy to have a low long-term interest rate environment. And this hasn't been clarified, and it's fundamental because if you put the emphasis on one side, you're going to say you've got to change the monetary policy framework. If you put the emphasis on the other side, you say you've got to change something more in the flow of the global flow of savings, and that brings you to the discussion on the international monetary system. So there are also two quite different discussions. So, and then just another, question. I think we start having, some responses on, but why such a small crisis like the subprime crisis, which was really a fourth or a fifth of the savings and loan crisis that the US experienced in the 90s, why has such a small crisis has such major consequences? And in fact, all the people who said we didn't see it coming, they looked at the numbers and they said at the time, well, it's a local crisis that affects the real estate, a segment of the real estate market in the US. So by, the losses there, they're probably 0.2%, 0.2% of global GDP. So that's something that is totally digestible. And we had an experience of going through from crisis to crisis, and all the crises remain local. We've gone through the Asian crisis, we've gone through the savings and loan crisis in the US, the Mexican crisis before, the Russian crisis, all sorts of crises, and the system was extremely resilient. So basically it created a sense of false security that, there were crises, but the underlying trade-off, while there are crises, they're costly locally, they're not costly globally, and perhaps the cost locally is a price to pay for the overall efficiency that the system creates. So I think there is more to be discussed and to be understood than just a particular theory of it. Now, I have a second disagreement, and my second disagreement is about money. I think money has little to do. I don't think it has nothing to do, but money has little to do with what you've seen. We've seen a crisis of the financial system, not of the monetary system fundamentally. Now, there is a caveat, which is, the channels through low interest rate. But to my mind, it's the channels through which money can influence, can have be one of the factors of this crisis. But for the rest, the monetary system was unchanged. We haven't seen any major change in the monetary system since the end of Bretton Woods. So from the 70s until now, we basically, there have been changes with the focus more on price stability or the focus more on inflation targeting, etc. But there were not fundamental changes in the monetary system. Whereas we've seen fundamental changes in the financial system. We've seen changes in the financial system through the removal of Glass-Steagall, through the development of securitization, through the development of the shadow banking system, through capital liberalization the world over, and the rise of international capital flows. And those were the changes that were introduced in the last 10 or 20 years. So I would go back primarily to those changes rather to money to explain what has happened.